The video was voiced by a neural network. It is recommended to enable subtitles.
The number of puzzles is innumerable, but amazing people, who are called inventors, continue to create new models of woody problems and mechanisms. From my very childhood, puzzle creators seemed to me to be special sages. In their creative gift there is a mysterious component, the same without which the art of a magician is unthinkable. Currently, I know a little bit more about them, about the inventors of tricks and puzzles. Part of the magical qualities that my imagination endowed them with, as it turned out, has a rationally explainable nature, but my respect for these people is still great. I continue to wonder how the author of the puzzle comes up with this great idea. What events and reflections preceded it? What is the identity of the inventor itself? How does someone come up with a puzzle? What is it like, this moment of insight, discovery, illumination by thought after painful hours of intense meditation? Undoubtedly, everyone had a chance to revel in the triumph of their minds over a difficult task, after it was solved or after overcoming a seemingly insoluble problem. In proportion to the severity of the task and the mental expenditure, some even have moments when the triumphant, startled by his own discovery, flies through Syracuse on the wings of delight, pushed out of the bath by the force of extreme emotional excitement. Runs forgetting himself right in the outfit in which his mind was illuminated by a wonderful thought, shouting, Eureka! Do epigons and plagiarists experience such vivid emotions? I think they are not so enthusiastic about found a solution, and the anticipation of solving a hard problem is also not available to them. Among the small number of puzzles I have, which for various reasons has not been growing for a long time, but only decreasing, and apparently will never, even ironically, be called a collection, there is one that belongs to the most famous puzzles, but the history of which I wanted to look more closely. In a collection of puzzles published for Martin Gardner's 90th birthday, Rick Van Grohl, a man whose name is familiar to puzzle lovers, said that in his opinion, the most famous puzzles are Tangram, the 15 puzzle, Rubik's Cube, and the puzzle with 4 colored cubes, Instant Insanity. Any textbook on graphic theory will certainly include an example of a spectacular graphical solution to a puzzle with 4 cubes painted in 4 colors. The authors of this manual, Gary Chartrand and Ping Sheng, found it appropriate to mention in their graph theory course the fact that, in 1966 year, the Guinness Book of World Records recorded that retail sales of this puzzle had surpassed annual sales. The monopoly that has been in the lead, the list of games the board for many years. The puzzle of 4 colored cubes was brought to the market under the name Instant Insanity by Parker Brothers, whom were granted a license by developer Franz O. Armbruster. 12 million copies sold in only 1966 provided the puzzle a place in the National Museum of American History of the Smithsonian Institution. Given the popularity of the puzzle, it certainly did not go unnoticed in the Soviet Union, although it did not receive the same attention that it did in the United States. In 1969, the February issue of the popular magazine Science and Life published an article by the famous popularizer of mathematics and puzzles Boris Kotovy about this puzzle of four colored cubes. When the toy factory of the Vika Production Association started producing this puzzle, I could not find out. There is information that the Odessa toy factory also produced this puzzle, but I have no confirmation of it. It is known that a citizen of the United States, a resident of Detroit, Frederick Schossow, who applied for an invention in 1899, in 1900 received a patent for a puzzle of four cubes. A few years before the advent of instant insanity in 1961 in the August issue of the magazine New Scientist, in the article Puzzles and Paradoxes, Byrne gave examples of 5 puzzles, in his own words, in the sense of mathematical abstraction, completely identical, among which he named Katzenjammer and Great Tantalizer. Katzenjammer is a puzzle patented by Fred Schossow. On the faces of its cubes are depicted card suets. In Great Tantalizer, each card suet is matched with one of the 4 colors, and the faces of the cubs are colored according to this model. In addition, 2 opposite faces of one of the cubs, which are internal to the assembled puzzle, are rearranged. At one time I thought that the rearrangement of these faces was an innovation brought to the design of Schossow by Armbruster. But no. Armbruster, as he admitted, repeated the Great Tantalizer model without the slightest changes. Only he made it not with wood like the prototype he saw in 1965. But with plastic. Robert Stegman collected on his website a huge number of examples of puzzles from 4 cubs, several dozen, which he classified as instant insanity family. At the same time, he noted that only 3 of them are non-isomorphic to Frederick Schossow's puzzles. However, I see that 2 of these 3 have 2 graphical solutions, which makes the puzzle easier, and only the puzzle named Enigmas has a single graphical solution and a graph different from the graph Katzenjammer, not isomorphic to it. That is, for many years, imitators and plagiarists did not bother to search for new combinations of colored cubes, just copied the Schossow pattern, changing the drawings on the faces or replacing one color with another or performing the entire set of cubs from some new material. Does recoloring someone else's puzzle inspire you? What's the big deal? Good idea. Take off your pants and shout Eureka. It is very difficult to find your own idea, original, similar to the idea found by Frederick Schossow. All the more curious as Schossow being able to find this combination of cubes. I found 1073 variants of the puzzle that cannot be obtained by simple recoloring, and only 204 non-isomorphic graphs correspond to them. Frederick Schossow did not have a computer. His experience and knowledge is somewhat different from those of my contemporary. Unfortunately, too much time has passed to be able to hope to shed light on the circumstances of the creative search for this inventor. I have tried to collect at least information about Frederick Schossow to form my own impression about this man, and the little that I know convinces me that Frederick Schossow was a person undoubtedly creative, a real inventor, an active citizen, and probably had many fine human qualities, the evidence of which is rarely found in the mostly civil documents I have studied. Time is always with us somehow deceives when it passes slowly and stretchy, and the frame of our retrospections is large. We have time to forget a lot when it rushes at a gallop, and a lot of events are crammed into a minute of time we fail to save in our memory. Over time, it happens that the personality of the creator gradually, imperceptibly alienates from his work, fades until the author completely disappears from public memory, despite the fact that his legacy, which has lost a parent, only adds weight in the eyes of future generations. Let's try to turn back the clock. Fort Detroit was founded in 1701 by Antoine Lamet de la Mothe Cadillac, who was at that time not a car, but a Gascon subject of the French crown. As conceived by 51 French colonists who built the settlement, the place was suitable for vigorous trade with the natives, the content of which was to be a profitable exchange of fire-water for Indian precious furs and other treasures of the American continent. By the way, the founder of the city is on the facade of the city hall. The stronghold of civilization did not grow very quickly, and for a long time it looked like this. Much of its history can be found in the books of Silas Farmer. In 1760, Detroit, as a result of hostilities, passed into the possession of English Canada. It became American only in 1796 and received the status of a city in 1815. Family of Frederick's grandfather, Frederick Schossow, Prussian German Friedland Schlesien, his wife Anna Schossow, born in Swaby in Württemberg, and their 6-year-old son Charles, probably Carl, at birth, according to American immigration documents, moved from Prussia to the American continent in 1854. Among the 215,000 Germans who arrived that year, an entry in the census of 1860th, indicating that the birthplace of their youngest daughter Anna Maria, born in 1855, Schossow, suggests that the family did not immediately go to Detroit. Perhaps the choice of a new place of residence was not as simple. The so-called second wave of immigration brought more than 15 million people to America, mostly from Ireland and Germany. The main flow of people arrived through the sea gates of New York, then this mass of people scattered across America, mainly along the rails of private railway companies which multiplied and flourished in the middle of the 19th century. It seems to me very likely that the last 100 miles of the way to the destination of their traveling, the German settlers' Schossows, crossed by water a steamer of the Dead Road and Cleveland steamship line. Silas Farmer 1839-1902 has collected for us an impressive amount of factual material from the life of the city, and wonderful illustrations of the views of Detroit in the 19th century. The history of Detroit, Wayne County, and early Michigan has passed several editions, and this is not his only work. His father John Farmer, a cartographer, left us maps of the city of Detroit, one of which we will have a look at shortly. By the way, general offices of the Detroit and Cleveland Steam Navigation Company in Detroit. The book by David Lee Porumba contains a lot of statistical material and historical sketches. And we will also look at Almon Ernest Parkin's book Historical Geography of Detroit. In 1854, Detroit was still a very modest city with a population of just over 40,000 people. In the Library of Congress, I found a lithograph by the author Berger showing some of Detroit's views and landmarks in 1852, shortly before the Schossows moved to the city. Here in this building, which until 1847 housed the state government, since 1863, part of the area will be given to the first high school in Detroit in which Frederick's grandson, Frederick, will probably study. Perhaps the same school was visited by Charles Schossow. It is unlikely that the river was actually as lively as in this lithograph, which presumably dates back to 1889, and Detroit itself did not look so bleak. But if the author wanted to create a sense of the industrial power of the city, he succeeded. The house of the Schossows was not included in the lithograph, but even if it had been, it would not have been depicted reliably, since the general schematic nature of this lithography is obvious. A large number of Germans lived in the eastern part of the city. According to Parkins, in the middle of the 19th century, the most populous nation among the settlers was the Germans. In 1880, Germans born outside of the country composed 20% of Detroit's population. In the Illustrated Historical Atlas of Wayne County for 1876, compiled by Belden, Detroit appears more graceful and aristocratic. Although the illustrations from the book by Silas Farmer seem to me a little more realistic. In the part of the city where the Schossows settled, apparently there were not so many luxurious houses. In any case, I could not find, among the photos available on the network, the views of the quarter in which they lived, from which I conclude that for the chroniclers of Detroit did not seem to be something outstanding in there. Robinson's Atlas for 1885 reproduced the urban development in great detail. In Charles Clark's Detroit City Directory 1862, Liber, Frederick Schossow resides on Fort Street near Chain. But in 1861, the Schossow family lived, according to Johnston's Detroit City Directory, at 409 Franklin Street. This is very close to the river, to the storage areas located along the river. The eastern part of Detroit is largely occupied by industrial enterprises. In the data of the 1806 census, Frederick Schossow is listed as a laborer. By 1880, workers accounted for 25% of the total number of all employed in Detroit. And this was 16,100 people in a city with a population of just over 116,000. In the census of 1870, Charles is not listed at the place of residence of his parents, nor is he listed at the place of residence of his future wife. I could not find an entry about him in the 9th National Census and did not find the exact date of registration of the marriage between Charles and Anna Sandman, but apparently this event occurred between 1872. The Sandmen, Charles, Christine and their children, Augusta, Anne and Mary, as well as the Schossow, immigrated to America from Prussia in 1854. Charles Sandman's age at the time of the 1860 census was only 42 years old. Meanwhile, in 1863, care for the family lies solely on the shoulders of Charles' widow Christina, who lives with children 113 Crowan Street. After the death of her husband, Christina and her daughters earned their livelihood by custom tailoring and making artificial flowers. By 1868, Christina Sandman with her daughters Auguste and Anna lived at Clinton 164. It was in this house that Charles and Anne had their first child. Frederick, his second name, probably, is Auguste Schossow on the 3rd of April, 1873. Charles Schossow works as a carpenter during this period. This is the address of the Sandman family's first residence, Croydon 113. They move here, on Clinton, 164, later. Schossow Sr., the Frederick's grandfather, the father of Charles, meanwhile, moves with his wife and daughter to Leap Street between Jefferson Avenue and Congress Street. In 1873, Frederick's grandfather and his family finally settled in a house located on the southeast corner of the intersection of East Lafayette and Leeb at 858 East Lafayette. I believe that this same house would later have an address of East Lafayette 862. The house of the Schossows is located in the Elmwood Cemetery, which is the oldest continuously operating since 1846 non-denominational cemetery in Michigan. In 1874, at the age of 19, Charles' sister Anna Maria died. The cause of death listed on the death certificate is consumption. In 1875, Charles and Anna had a daughter, Tristina. In 1876, all the Schossows lived at 850 at East Lafayette. After trying to sell groceries, Charles returned to making brooms. It was this business that seemed to be developing and promising. On 21 March 1877, Charles and Anna had their third child, Carl. On March 16, 1879, at the age of 58, Frederick Schossow died of a heart attack. On 28 March, his wife Anna also died, according to the conclusion of her death from consumption. Brewmakers. In 1880, the population of Detroit was 116,342 people. The total number of employees is about 64,000, while industrial production employs more than 16,000 people. From 1827 to 1887, 175 steamboats left the slipways of the Detroit Dry Dock Company. By the way, Henry Ford worked as an engineer for this company for 2 years, from 1880 to 1882. Woodward Avenue. To the left is the City Hall, in the foreground is the Bagley Memorial Fountain, in the distance is the Majestic Building. On the city map, the City Hall. Here the high school which presumably studied Frederick Schossow. Campus Marches is a favorite place for Detroiters to recreation, walking, etc. The Bagley Memorial Fountain. View from a different angle. The Woodward Avenue, the Ford Street, the Majestic Building, the Opera House, the Soldiers and Sailors Monument. The Bagley Memorial Fountain is a gift to the city from its noble and wealthy citizen John Judson Bagley. The Majestic Building was named as a fireproof skyscraper during the construction phase, and this claim was proven in In 1915, when a fire broke out on the top floor and was being burned for 2 hours. The fire did not spread to other floors and did not damage the supporting structure of the building. The building was demolished in 1962. The Soldiers and Cellars Monument. On the right is the Opera House. I like the architecture of late 19th and early 20th century Detroit. Here is the Opera House. Merrill Fountain, 1901, in front of the Opera House. Italian Renaissance style. Architects Joan Carrer and Thomas Hastings also designed the New York Public Library. The fountain was commissioned by Elizabeth Merrill Palmer to honor her father, gift to the city. Until the fountain is built, the place is given for parking. Charles Brady King was the first person in Detroit to design, build, and drive an automobile before Henry Ford built his automobile. Here he is typing a message for Ford on his smartphone, or orders tickets for Led Zeppelin. In old Detroit, everything seems more harmonious and attractive to me than in modern. This is architecture that the eye sticks to, that one wants to consider. Begley's Fountain, today, has been moved to the end of Cadillac Square, closer to the Wayne County building. The building previously housed the administrative offices of Wayne County. The building was built from 1897 to 1902. Architecture is frozen music. The aesthetics of environment, cultural background, childhood impressions, family traditions, mechanisms of socialization, all these factors affect the disclosure of a creative person in the most direct way. I really like seeing Detroit during the Frederick Schossow period. Here he is by the way, about music. Among the newspaper ads for 1903, I came across an ad indicating that Frederick was giving music lessons. In the catalogue of title entries for 1902, I found a brochure by his authorship, an exposition of the symbol system of musical notation. His sister will also teach music. It is possible that the Schossows provided their children with a deeper musical education than that provided for in the school curriculum. The Detroit Free Press noted more than once the participation of the younger Schossows in musical performances and listed their names in the children's chore. For example here, 5-year-old Lois, she was born on the 13th of July. Carl and Christina are listed among the members of the chore of the Church of the Messiah. Christina would later marry a member of the same chore, Melbourne Crisp. The newspaper is a little later with an announcement of important musical events. For Gilmore concerts. Patrick Gilmore is probably the principal figure in 19th century American music. Musician, composer, conductor, organizer of major national and international music festivals. In 1872, at his invitation, the only American tour of the Waltz King Johann Strauss took place. This announcement only Carl Schossow sings in the large children's chore. Based on the questionnaire of the census of 1940, Frederick completed 2 grades of high school. This is the only reference I have found about an education completed by Frederick Schossow. Although in the 1896 the Detroit City Directory, 23-year-old Fred is listed as a student. It is difficult to say what kind of skills or knowledge he acquires during this period. In 1880, Charles and Anne had a daughter, Mabel, who was destined to live only 8 years. I can't tell you how successful Charles' business was, but in 1880, the Schossows had a servant and in addition to them 2 boarders lived in the house. Kristen Sandman also lived in the same house. Charles seems to be an energetic entrepreneur. Over the years he was the owner and co-owner of various similar in nature of activities enterprises, and also worked in management positions both in his own enterprises and in companies in which he apparently did not participate directly. By 1880, Charles owns, judging by indirect indications, a small manufactory for the production of brooms and brushes. Since the early 80s, Charles has been doing business with partner Charles Douglas. They are listed on the same page of Detroit city directories in 1880 as broommakers, but still separately. Douglas is the owner of the Detroit Broom Company. Schossow is producing brooms under his own name and address at this time. In the 1882 directory, they are associates in the Detroit Broom Company, with Schossow being the company manager. Curiously, Charles Douglas was also a practicing physician according to the 1885 Detroit directory. In 1887, Douglas and Schossow co-owned the brush supply manufacturers, and at the same time they registered the trade name Detroit Wooden Novelty Company. Their office is close to Charles' home. However, the 10-year partnership abruptly ended. An announcement in the Detroit Free Press informs us of a change in the Articles of Association of the Detroit Wooden Novelty Company. There is no Schossow among the owners. It is noted that the company is based on the intellectual property of Charles Douglas. Douglas is president, William Webb is secretary and treasurer. I found only one patent of the inventor Charles Douglas. It looks pretty witty, but it seems that this patent was not in great demand. The annual report of the Bureau of Employment and Industrial Statistics provide the following information about the first year of operation of the new Detroit Wood Novelty Company. The company produces elements of brushes and brooms. It employs 35 male workers, 1 boy under the age of 14, 4 teenagers under the age of 16. The working day lasts 10 hours, with a 30-minute dinner. The permission for short dinner hour was given by the labor inspector. The report for the following year, 1894, notes that the number of employees in the past period reached 50 people, but decreased to 41. The average monthly payroll was $1,375 for teenagers under 16 but over 14. The length of the working day is the same duration and the lunch break. The governor of the state of California would say about this.
Capitalism.
Pay attention to the line below in the same report. Buick and Sherwood Manufacturing Company. This is a plumbing company. Significant number of employees and high payroll. Charles will join this company. Yes, this is the same Buick, the inventor and car manufacturer. The office is on the same street as Charles' house. The Buick and Sherwood's leather-bounded catalog of 1898 is on sale today on Amazon. Buick would sell his stake to Sherwood in 1899 for $100,000 to focus entirely on automobiles. Newspaper, Maysville, Kentucky, 6 June 1895, Detroit Wooden Novelty Factory burned down. The insurance company will partially cover the loss of $30,000. Charles is actively involved in social activities. According to the materials of the City Council, he is the Registrar of Voters in the elections of 1892. He is the chairman of the election committee in his district in the elections of 1896. His wife Anne is a regular member of Women's Auxiliary to the Board of Missions in the state of Michigan. Saginaw Evening News. Frederick Schossow is the best man, Christina is the bridesmaid. Wedding at the Seaman family home. The Schossows are related to Seaman. Joseph Seaman is co-owner of the publisher Seaman and Peters, Saginaw, Michigan. The Peters are also in attendance at the wedding featured in Saginaw Evening News. Perhaps Joseph Seaman will provide patronage to the young Carl at the beginning of his career at the oldest publishing house in Michigan, Borman Jones and Son. Much later, with nearly 20 years of experience in the publishing business, Carl moved to Seaman and Peters. From 1911 to 1929 he and his wife will spend in Saginaw under the constant attention of the society columns, then moved to California. Carl and Agnes Maria Isabel Smith, who married in 1902, were a childless couple. Carl died at the age of 80, having lived for the last 9 years as a widower. Looking at the photo, I wonder if Carl looked like an older brother. Of course they were similar. A comparison of the mobilization regulations of 1917 proves this. Both are tall, slender, dark-haired. Fred, however, is blue-eyed and had a good hairline, unlike Carl. Carl, who started working as a printer right out of high school, spent the last years of his life as a City Hall caretaker in Long Beach, Los Angeles. It is possible that the separation of Schossow and Douglas was due to the former's transition to work at Buick and Sherwood, where in 1896 he held the position of superintendent. After David Buick left Buick and Sherwood, Superintendent Charles Schossow and Secretary and Treasurer Albert Babcock also left the company to form their own plumbing company, Babcock and Schossow Manufacturing, with a capital of $25,000 in 1903. The company is rated by Bradstreet, not yet Dun and Bradstreet. Treasurer of the company is F.W. Meal, remember this name. The plumbing market is booming. In 1911, the average American consumed 24 pounds of soap a year, while the next highest Englishman consumed only 19 pounds. However, it seems that everything is not so simple for the new company. Babcock in 1905 goes to work at Elmwood Cemetery and Manufacturing Company. The work of both Charles and Frederick will be mainly related to the activities of enterprises that produce plumbing. Most of Frederick Schossow's inventions are also associated with plumbing, but not all of them. The first patent he received of those found by Google was a tobacco pipe with coiled channel. At the moment, the results of Google include 25 inventions of Frederick Schossow. Many of them seem to be very familiar, at least to me and, I suppose, to many people. This is a puzzle. According to the links in the issue, you can assess the demand for each invention, its use in prototyping, when developing similar designs. In specialized periodicals of that time, there are more than once references to the use of Schossow's patents by manufacturers of the corresponding products. But I was not lucky to stumble upon the inventions of Armbruster. Here is an automatic sub-dispenser. Various gates. In 1899, Charles and Frederick register the Detroit Wood Novelty Company, in which Fred is the manager. At this point, the Katzenjammer puzzle has already been invented, but not yet patented. The application was filed in May 1899, and the puzzle is on sale in many US states in July. Philadelphia Inquirer, 2nd of July 1899. Sales agents wanted to sell the greatest puzzle of the 19th century, the Katzenjammer puzzle. Sample. 10 cents. The eye over a tailor has made a bold prediction for the next century. The best puzzle of the 20th century. In the 80s of the 19th century, Puzzle 15 spread around the world and reached its peak of popularity. The authorship of it was jealously attributed to himself by Samuel Lloyd, but as Jerry Slocum and Dick Senevald discovered in 2006, the puzzle was actually invented by the postmaster from Illinois, Palmer Chapman, who failed to protect his copyright. Two great puzzles at the same time, it was a lot even for America. The Schossows launched a very broad advertising campaign. This newspaper is St. Paul, Minnesota, New York. A great Katzenjammer, Georgia. Hustlers earn big money. Why not you? Indianapolis, and so on. However, it seems to me that the name for the puzzle was not chosen suitable, not successful. A Katzenjammer is translated from German as hangover. This word has an ironic connotation. The Katzenjammer Kids is a popular American comic strip, which appeared in 1897, the series of which was being published until 2006, on the themes of which successful theatrical performances were staged and animated films were created. I am sure the title of the puzzle was deliberately associated with the comic book and that this trick was not conducive to market success. A puzzle is not a bag of laughter. Its solution requires serious mental expenses. And a person who has managed to solve the puzzle has every right to both his own high self-esteem and the recognition of his mental conditions by others. The title Katzenjammer has an ironic condescension that obviously belittles the value of defeating the task. At the same time, the puzzle remains extremely difficult. You can see this by trying to collect it. In the slogan, "Solve it or got crazy," which will happen first, there was a challenge. Parker Brothers knew how to sell. They managed to achieve commercial success where the Schossows failed. Inventors aren't always good marketers. Fred will have to earn extra money with music lessons. Vexed. Of the younger Schossows, Tristan was the first to marry in 1901. Carl married in 1902. Frederick and Myrtle Bateman were married in 1905. Louis will marry Hubert Ernest Schule in 1910. Having married, Frederick and his wife moved to 476 East Fort Street, closer to the city center from Fred's father's house. The Babcock and Schossow Company is replaced by the Red Star Cemetery Company after Babcock's departure. At the same address, F. William Meal, former treasurer of the Babcock and Schossow, President, Frederick Schossow, Secretary. The company is located logistically very favorably. In 1907, instead of Red Star, the Climax Sanitary Company was registered at the same address. The registration of the new company was announced both in the local press and in industry periodicals. Charles Schossow is vice president and general manager, F. William Meal is treasurer, Fred Schossow is secretary. The company's capitalization was $30,000. William Sherwood, formerly of Buick and Sherwood, joined the business shortly after. Market success seems to accompany Climax Sanitary Company. In any case, the company has been present on the market for quite a long time. Participated in any notable exhibitions related to the environment of housing and workspace comfort and modern consumer standards. At first time, the company focused on know-how in the production of wooden tanks and toilet seats. Frederick Schossow patented the method of fastening wooden elements in 1908. The trade name for this fastening method, Climax Joint Lock, of course belonged to the Climax Sanitary Company. It is known that the company also owned a registered commercial name Maxca for the line of toilet bowls that it later produced. Frederick's name appears in the press mainly in connection with his professional activities. He doesn't get the attention of the society gossip like Carl. But in the industry's periodicals, in the technical press, in printed copyright announcements, his name is constantly found. Outside of the profession, he is a member of the Detroit Yacht Club. It's hard to say whether sailing itself attracted him or whether belonging to the club's society mattered. Detroit Blue Book. A Light Family Directory. Official club lists. Schossow Frederick. The building of the club before the fire in 1904. We often mention fires in this story. On 21 November 1913, a fire destroyed the property of 6 woodworking enterprises located in the same territory, including the Climax Sanitary Company. Despite the fact that the company's management assured that the business was not fatally affected and the company would fulfill all its supply obligations. The company's advertising in the magazine Domestic Engineering came to naught, and all members of the company will soon work at Murray W. Sales and Company. In 1921, Frederick was invited to work for the Hayes Ruppel Manufacturing Company, but he would soon return to Murray. By 1920, Frederick and his wife were living in a rented apartment on Philadelphia Avenue on the west side of the city. But by 1930 they would be renting an apartment on Radford Avenue. In 1921, the journals Domestic Engineering and Michigan Architect and Engineer published an article by Frederick Schossow in Architect. It is more detailed, in which the author comments on the figures of economic damage from water leaks in faulty city pipelines, as well as from careless waste of water consumers, and calls for the accounting and conservation of tap water. In June 1922 in Detroit, at the General Motors Building, the National Exposition Plumbing and Heating was held. The exposition was organized on a large scale. Hundreds of thousands of citizens visited it. Simultaneously with the exhibition, the city hosted the 40th Congress of the National Association of Master Plumbers, which, according to press estimates, additionally attracted up to 2,500 people to the city together with the delegates of the Congress. Master classes and professional development schools for specialists were organized at the exhibition. There was a press corresponding to the scope of the exhibition. The magazine Domestic Engineering closely followed all the events, and thanks to it, we now have a photo of Frederick Schossow. Frederick Schossow. Walton Spurger is the treasurer of Sherwood Brass Works. Murray W. Salles and William Sherwood. Frederick Schossow passed away on December 7, 1949. The Detroit Free Press reported sparingly on his death. Elmwood Cemetery. Charles Schossow. Father. Anna Schossow. Mabel. 8 years old. Sister. Frederick Schossow. Myrtle Schossow died in 1966. This oak is about 60 years old. A puzzle of fur-colored cubes will be written into the history of mathematics before its name is associated with market success. In 1947, in the 9th issue of the periodical Eureka of the Student Mathematical Society Archimedeans of the University of Cambridge, the author, who called himself F. de Carte Blanche, his real name, as pointed out by Robert Stegman, Frederick E. B. Smith, has published an elegant graphical solution to this puzzle, which is included in all textbooks on the initial theory of graphs. The puzzle gave birth to an idea that pointed the way to solving a whole class of problems. In the assembled puzzle, each of the 4 colors must meet once on each of the 2 opposite faces, on 1 or 2 different dice. In the abstraction proposed by the author of the graphic solution, a color is a node and a pair of opposite faces are edges. Using these concepts, the graphical model of a cube looks like a combination of four nodes connected by three edges. Initially, on one diagram, he combined the nodes and edges from all four cubes, getting the so-called multigraph. A multigraph is, figuratively speaking, a set of possibilities. Let's repeat all these steps. We will combine the graphs of each of the cubes into one graphical representation. Each color must meet once on opposite sides of the assembled puzzle. That is from the multigraph. After it is built, it is necessary to select two subgraphs, in each of which any node has only two edges, or in terms of graph theory, each node has degree 2. Each subgraph will indicate the location of colors on the opposite pair of faces in a correctly assembled puzzle. One subgraph will correspond to the front-back faces and the other to the top-bottom faces. Obviously, the edges, pairs of faces, used in one of the subgraphs cannot be repeated in the second subgraph, since they cannot simultaneously be top-bottom and at the same time far nearer. This solution is both laconic and witty. With this guide, to assemble a puzzle has become really easy. Let's first collect the far near faces, then rotating the cubes according to the instructions. In the second subgraph, we will orient the top and bottom faces. That's it. Everything is ready. The complexity of the Schossow puzzle is 8. In other words, in order to assemble a puzzle from any arrangement of cubes, it is enough to rotate the cubes 90 degrees around the axis of symmetry of the cube no more than 8 times. This is much less than the complexity of the Rubik's Cube, which speedcubers collect in 4 seconds. I'm curious how many people are able to see 8 special combinations in a comparable time for the 4 cubes Schossow's puzzle. Of course, a single pattern is easy to learn, and the determining factor for building a puzzle can only be sleight of hand. But if there are 1,073 patterns, and in addition, each of these more than 1,000 patterns can be colored in 24 ways, challenge yourself. Maybe it's you who will surprise the world.